Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you guys are all doing well after the Super Bowl last night, but it is a Monday, and so you know what that means. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, are you ready for a fun show? Because
we're going to have a good time.
We have some wacky questions this week, and I am ready for it. The first one, not so wacky, though. It's from Steve Hawthorne, who wants to know, what was the impact of Devo Davis returning to the basketball team? They won the game, but it didn't seem like he had that much to do with it.
Yeah, I think Muss said it after the game. He kind of liked the way he played. I can see where if guys miss several games, you don't want him to come back and try to put the game on his back, try to do too much and end up messing things up. So I thought he played very cautiously, but he played defensively well. I think he had 2 steals, had 4 rebounds.
Didn't take many shots overall.
He didn't take a lot of shots. He hit 1 3 and then 1 free throw. And it was the 1 free throw that some people were critical of because I think it was with like 23 seconds left. And they had a 2-point lead, so he could put it up to 4 with both free throws with 23 seconds left, which would make it a 2-possession game again. And he just made 1 of them, and that could have been a problem, but it ended up not being. But he also fed Mekhi Mitchell with, I think, just under a minute to go. The game was tied, and he found him open under the basket, and Mitchell made that layup. And that they never trailed after that. So you could say that he had an assist, which led to the biggest basket of the game. So, you know, to say he didn't have much to do with it, he didn't win the leading scorer or anything like that. But I think they needed him to win the game. There were just little critical things that he did. So overall, again, I thought he did the right thing by not coming back and just trying to be a big star, but just sort of easing into the game.
Absolutely, and it's sometimes not what you see on the stat sheet as well. It's other things beyond that. I like what the players said when they talked about his impact. He's a leader in that locker room still, and I know there's some people that disagree. Mike, I know there are some people that disagree with that, but listen to the players in that post-game press conference. Tremont Mark, L. Ellis both said that when he talks to us, we listen.
Right.
That's still the voice of a leader. And so I think they understood why he had to step away. I think they all welcomed him back. I was really shocked to hear Bud Walton. I was kind of wondering if people were
big reaction.
Big cheers. Everyone was very happy to have him back.
Sure.
It seemed like. So I think it's sometimes what you see off the stat sheet. And I made this point on our Wednesday PTN Extra. I even crunched the numbers. When he left last year, when he returned, he played better. So I don't know if we're seeing the full impacts in just one game.
Right.
But he did play better. His stats did improve when he took that break. So do with that information what you will. Charlie Carroll asked, the win over Georgia was nice, but do you think they've turned some sort of corner? I will admit that since the Kentucky game, they've played better, but they're 2-2 in those games. Playing 500 won't get them into the postseason.
Well, it depends on what you mean by postseason. Definitely 500 basketball. If they go 4-4 from here on out, they'll make it to the NIT with a 15-14 overall record. That'll get them in, I promise, if you're an SEC team. So they're still in contention for a postseason. A lot of people wouldn't consider that important, but we've talked about NCAA. I mean, gee whiz, they'd have to go 7-1 from here on out, which means you might lose you might lose to Tennessee here on Wednesday, but then if you were to somehow win the rest of them, which would be an almost impossible task, then you could go 10-8 in the SEC, and then you'd probably still have to win an NCAA tournament game to get you to 20 wins. But if they had 20 wins and they were 2 games above 500 in the SEC, yeah, they'd get into the NCAAs, but that's a real stretch. I still don't think that'll happen. But again, when you look at, I was told, and I was off, so you were there. I wasn't there, but I was told there was about 15,000 at the game. And
yeah, give or take, yeah.
That's Georgia, even though I personally think Georgia and Florida, for instance, people have argued with me on here over the last few weeks when I've said I thought both of them were good teams, and then they get beat, and people say, oh, they're not very good.
Florida beat Auburn, so yeah.
Florida just beat. It's whatever night that you see them on, but I would say that Georgia, last time I looked, and I think I'm right about this, Georgia is in the lower half now of the SEC.
They are.
That doesn't mean they're not good. And I thought they played really well. I thought they were going to come back and win the game. Remember, they took the lead with about 2 minutes to go after being down 14 at one point. So I'm thinking, oh, here we go, I'm going to blow this game. And Arkansas ended up winning the game. So what does that mean? It tells me there's still, you have to separate I think definitely fans who have season tickets from just people on the internet. I think the people that have season tickets, even though they know they're probably not going anywhere, they're still interested in going and watching them play games. And I think there are plenty of people that will watch on TV. You can't separate internet people from ordinary people that watch TV. You don't have any way to break that down. But I've said this before. There are people on the internet, and it's not all of them, who are just plain mad, period. They're mad about a lot of things. And so they're going to be particularly negative when your team is not very good. And so, no, they probably could care less what happens from here on out. It's all negative. But it is interesting to me that even in a year in which it looks like they're not going to do anything postseason, people are still showing up at their games.
Yeah, there was a really good crowd, I thought, for that game against Georgia. And like I said before in the other question, you know, it's even like the thing where, I don't know how people are going to react with Devo Davis coming into the game. And I was pleasantly surprised that there was a really nice reaction, lots of crowd cheers, no boos or anything like that. So to your point, there is a separation between those people that go to the games, that have season tickets, and the loud majority on social media.
I watched the LSU-Alabama game, which was at LSU. Now, this was interesting because those two games are a week apart. Arkansas at LSU, Alabama at LSU. I seem to remember there being quite a few people there at the Arkansas game. Did you see the crowd for Alabama?
I did.
It was like empty.
I did. I was like,
and I
is
thought,
that just
why
the
is
TV?
this happening? And then what the interesting thing was that, and I've talked about shooting being Arkansas's problem. Well, look at what happened in that game. Just like against Arkansas, LSU came out hitting everything in sight. They were at about the second time out, they were hitting 70% of their shots. They were just throwing everything in. They could have turned around and bounced one off their elbow and it was going. And their center, the guy that Muss tried to bring in from Nevada, keep forgetting that guy's name, Will somebody. But he was out there hitting threes, throwing everything in, and so they're doing all it. But the difference is Arkansas, when that happened, it broke them. Alabama just went, okay. And they just kept scoring.
Okay.
LSU ended up with 11 threes. Alabama ended up with 19. 19 threes on the road. Now, that's a good team. That's how you win on the road. And that's the difference between Arkansas right now and an Alabama. They just don't shoot well enough to stay up with a team that's playing like that. And so it breaks them.
Yeah. And they have to know how to react when somebody does come out and punch them in the mouth. Alabama, like you said, shrugged it off. We're fine.
But
we're good.
Arkansas is not the only team that has had that happen.
No,
Look at
I know.
Auburn. They just got decked.
They got decked by Florida. I mean, I said
they
Florida
lost by
beat
over
them.
20.
Yeah, was it 15 at the end of it? I think it was like 15 at the end
I thought
of it.
At some point it was over 20.
It was, but then Auburn crept back right at the end a little bit. But I think, if I'm not wrong, if I looked at the final score correctly, I think it was by 15.
The game, but I'm going, wow, this looks like the Florida-Arkansas game. So you know, what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm saying that Arkansas has played some teams that when they played them, especially on the road, were playing really well.
Yeah, and you also have to look at the SEC as a whole. We've said this for weeks now. I feel like we're broken records. The SEC is just a little bit different this year in the fact that it's one of the best conferences in basketball. It's always up there, but I mean, they're still predicting like 9 teams to get in the NCAA tournament.
You got about
9.
You got 3 at the top, maybe 4, and then you got all these teams in the middle that go all the way down to Georgia, that at any time they can go back and forth and play really well.
Exactly. Armand Abbey says, in spite of all the critics, I still had fun watching Arkansas beat Georgia. The Dogs are a good team at times, and they played their butts off. I thought they had Arkansas when they took that lead with 2 to play. Kudos to Muss and his players. They stepped up big time. I love the 3-point defense.
Yeah, that's something we haven't talked about was the 3-point defense, because that is where Georgia can really kick you in the butt, and Arkansas was just all over them. So that's another sign that this team has improved. It's now gone into 4 games, and you know what's interesting? And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but what are those 4 games? Those 4 games are games that Trevon Brazile has not played. So look what has happened. I mean, Jalen Graham and Mekhi Mitchell have upped their game with Trevon on the bench. Isn't that interesting?
That is an interesting point, Mike.
They have improved since Brazile stopped playing. What is going on there?
I don't know. I think we have a question about Trevon Brazile coming up right next, so we'll kind of lead right into that. Pig's Feet asks, any insight to whether Trevon Brazile will play again this year? I'm not sure he has been playing healthy for quite some time. When healthy, he can be a difference maker.
Well, there's no question that if you go all the way back to the start of the season, he played better earlier in the year, but there have always been these inconsistencies. I went back and looked. He had 14 points and 17 boards against Stanford. That was the first game in the Bahamas. Then 2 games later, he had no points and 2 rebounds against North Carolina. Then he came back and had his best game, 19 points, 11 rebounds against Duke, and then back to no points and 1 board against Oklahoma. Now, since the Oklahoma game, he's not had 1 double-double, or he didn't have 1 double-double, and he averaged under 10 points a game. His last game was South Carolina, where he had 3 points and 6 rebounds, and he's now missed 4 with no indication if he's coming back. So what does that all mean? Well, it could mean that the injury has never been fully explained.
Yeah, I know.
They've never said, oh, yeah, it's his knee that was operated on, and it's swelling, and it's causing him some problems. Perhaps. Sometimes if you come back a little too soon from a knee operation like that, you can get swelling. Maybe that's the inconsistency that we're seeing, that in some of those games he felt better than in other games. The one thing that Musselman said the other day was that he still apparently has trouble moving laterally when he's trying to work out, and that would indicate, if you've ever had a stretch, I had a stretched ACL at one time, it never tore, but it wasn't so much a problem when you're moving forward, it's when you stop and brace yourself and try to cut and change directions. It can cause pressure on that ligament, and so maybe that's what it is. Maybe in all of those games where he
wasn't playing so well,
he was having more of an issue. And look, I will just tell you, I've talked to people that have come back from ACL. First of all, the injury itself is so painful, and what it does to you, which knocks you out for an entire season, you are really, really cautious when you come back because you're afraid of it happening again. You don't want to feel that way again. That is such an intense pain. So it could be that, he's a little bit nervous. He starts feeling something down there and thinking, oh, and all of a sudden subconsciously he's not playing well. There's got to be some reason why he'd have 14 points, 19 points, down to 0. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
But the issue of whether he will come back or not, now a lot of people say that he's at the point. I had a guy try to explain to me, and it's not illogical that this could happen. What I told him is, you have no proof of this. But what he was saying is, he's clearly got an agent. It's like Nick Smith Jr. He's got an agent that said, just say you're hurt for the rest of the year because your draft stock is going down, and then at the end of the year you can say you were hurt, but you're trying to rehab now, and then within 2 or 3 weeks you're suddenly feeling better. And then maybe that will help explain why you weren't playing so well.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot of theory and stuff like that. So there's no way to ever know what's going on there. From a practical standpoint, if you're a Razorback fan, again, I go back to what we said before. They are playing better with him not there. So, do you want him to come back? I think you would only want him to come back if he's the guy that's going to score 19 points with 17 boards. If that guy comes back, yeah, you definitely want him back.
Well, to who asked the question, Pig's Feet, to his point, if he plays healthy, that's what you get. I mean, to our theory, if he's playing healthy.
If he's at some point it's okay, and he goes back out there and he's playing that way again, then fine. But I'm saying right now, I don't know that it's a huge issue. They're playing better with him gone.
No, I don't think so either. And to go to the other fan that said the theory on the Nick Smith Jr. thing, I don't think that's entirely true because we know Nick was dealing with an actual issue.
His was a real thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think Trevon's dealing with an actual issue because I think these players, whether people want to believe it or not, whether their agent tells them to do whatever, it doesn't matter. They will be played. If they are healthy and they are good, the coach, Musselman, will go, stop saying those things, I'm playing them. And that's what happened with Nick Smith Jr., where when he was healthy, he was like, I'm playing. I want to play. I love this team. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but hey, it's a theory. Hog Redneck says, it seems like to me when hear more internet theories, right? It seems like to me when the internet crazies made up stories about the personal lives of players, they should be sued. I'd love to see some of these clowns taken to court.
Well, you and I were talking about this. That would be very difficult to do. I don't think you could sue anybody that's just passing along what they heard.
No,
because
you
they're not
can't.
the source of the rumor. And I just don't think you could do that. If you could find a person and identify them as the first person that put some rumor on the board that wasn't true, and it was something bad about a player, he did this, he did that, then you might be able to successfully. But here's the thing about stuff like that. You don't have to worry about that, because the way lawyers work, if they know you've got a case, they'll find you. They will.
They will.
They'll come find you and go, hey, man, we ought to sue this guy and we'll make a lot of money. Well, you don't see anybody doing this. And the fact that you don't see people on the internet getting sued, there's a reason, because it's probably next to impossible to win a case like that. So the only way you do it is if you were a player and you hired a lawyer, and that lawyer would say to you, okay, if you want me to take your case, pay me this much amount of money and I'll do it.
Yeah.
But you're probably not going to win.
No, and the other thing, a lot of these people who make up these rumors hide behind profiles that are very hard to track down as well. If you don't have your name or anything identifying you, it can be difficult to find out who are making these rumors. And a lot of people start these rumors with, I had a cousin who told me this because he works for the basketball team or whatever. And that's, if you put something like that out there.
Remember the one that there was a local restaurant owner.
There's a local restaurant owner in Fayetteville that knows what they're talking about. Okay, well, who are you talking about?
What restaurant? We talking about McDonald's, Burger King? What do we do?
There's a local Fayetteville restaurant, and it's the McDonald's on wherever I'm dead. It's crazy, and it's hard to track down. But if someone like a media outlet, like we said these things were fact, we can be sued.
We can be sued.
Because we're easily identifiable. Obviously, they can easily come after us. It's because these rumors are hard to track down.
The answer is it's not going to happen, but my comment would be, I'd love to see it happen. It would be funny, but it's not going to happen.
I would love to see
Don't hold
them.
your breath.
I would love to see them get taken to court too. But again, not going to happen. Lem Bruster asks, how did Dre Greenlaw end up with a serious injury from just running out onto the field? That is crazy. Are pro athletes really that fragile? I think it cost the Niners the Super Bowl. I think it did too, honestly.
First of all, a ligament, and this was a Achilles heel tendon. Ligaments, tendons, things like that, they're not like muscles where you pump them up and therefore they're very big and strong and healthy. A ligament and a tendon is just what it is. You don't make them bigger or stronger through exercise, I don't think. And what the Achilles tendon does is it's the thing that attaches your calf to the back of your ankle. Now, if you watch what happened, he was all jumping up and down, excited, wanted to get back out on the field. And then when he took that first step onto the field, I'm talking about Dre Greenlaw, he took a monster step. And what you see is his head goes way down. And you see he kind of looks around, and everybody else is up here, and his head's down here, and he kind of looks like he's going to crawl out on the field. So I'm sure he became self-conscious, and he tried to straighten back up. And when you're stretched out like that, and then you stretch up, I can see where that thing would snap. Now, you say, look at all the things you do in practice, in a game, and why would it do it in that instance and not in another instance? I don't know. I always use examples from my own life. I started for 3 years on my high school team. I never even missed a practice. I was never injured even to the point where I missed a practice, much less a game. But my best friend, who didn't start when he was a sophomore, and it was really bad because we grew up together, and I got to start, and he didn't our sophomore year, and I could tell he didn't like it, didn't say much about it. But then his junior year, he got to start. He gets 3 games in, a guy steps on his foot and breaks 3 bones in his foot right there on the top, and he was out for the rest of the year. So he would go to the games on crutches until he had that cast until he got the cast off. And he'd be over there, and then after the game, he lived like 2.5 blocks from the stadium, so I'd get in his car and just leave my car at the field house, and I'd go home with him and spend the night. We'd talk about the game and all kinds of stuff. Well, I'd get in the bedroom and take my shoes off, and he sees, first time it's happened, he saw both my feet just all swollen up. And he goes, well, what happened to your feet? And I said, well, people are stepping on my feet all the time. This happens all the time. They just swell up, and then they go back down. He said, well, how come your feet aren't broken? I go, I don't know. It just didn't happen. but I got my feet stepped on all the time and never broke one bone. And he'd had it happen one time and broke 3 bones.
Did you drink a lot of milk growing up? You had really strong bones?
It's just stupid. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just luck, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think so, especially just the way the injury can happen. I mean, sometimes it's just really weird. Things can happen where you just move a certain way and you're like, oh my gosh. That, like we saw with Dre. I mean, that hop that he did that you're talking about, I think he was just so excited to get out there.
Whoa, that's too big.
I know, but man, it just was so bad luck. I hate watching it because they have the video replaying, on social media. And it was so sad to see. I mean, we talked about it. We think it did cost the Niners.
I do.
The
I
Super
think
Bowl.
at some point, the kind of player he is, at some point he would have made a key tackle to force a fumble, maybe come up with a fumble, maybe get an interception, which we saw earlier in the playoffs. He would have done something to stop a Kansas City drive that either ending in a field goal or a touchdown, and then it would have made the difference in the game.
Absolutely. WV Hog Fan wants to know, please explain the substitute runner rule used in softball. In baseball, a player cannot return to a game once he is removed. I always get so confused on that one.
In women's softball, you are allowed 1 courtesy runner a game.
Yes.
It can be anybody. There's no specification. I think at one time somebody said it was a catcher only or this or that. It's 1 per game. And the reason you do that, obviously, is if you've got somebody where you desperately need to score and you've got somebody on first, then you're thinking maybe if we get a single, they can go all the way to third if there's nobody out, and then maybe you can drive them in on a pop, fly ball to the outfield or what. There's strategy. So why don't they do that in baseball, college baseball? I think it's just because of tradition. They've never done it. I've double-checked trying to find out because I keep hearing they're eventually going to change the rule in college baseball and allow them to place a runner on second, because they do that in women's softball. They place a runner on second in extra innings, and we saw that have an effect in the Penn State game. Well, people are saying they may do that at some point in men's baseball, but the reason they haven't so far is tradition. So I'm thinking the reason they don't allow these courtesy runners in men's baseball is tradition.
Interesting.
And people are going, we don't want that.
That's interesting. We'll see if it gets changed. Is that something they're looking at doing as well with the courtesy runners, or is it just placing a runner on second?
You just hear rumors all the time. I've heard less about courtesy runners and more that they might go ahead in extra innings. Because remember, we had this discussion one day about trying to make games shorter.
Right.
That was a year or 2 ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And I just went off on that because my attitude is, if you like a sport, why are you wanting it to be shorter? I love watching games. I'd sit out there. Of course, I was having to work, but I was there at that game that went into extra innings, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember going to the SEC tournament, and there was a game that lasted till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Gosh.
And you're about to go to sleep, but you're still watching it because you're invested in it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't favor a rule like that. I don't know why they do it in women's sports other than in softball, other than I guess they want to get the thing over with quicker. I don't know.
There you go. Mousetown says, like last year, our softball team started the season highly ranked. Yes, I was a little disappointed in the lack of offense in the Florida tournament. Courtney says I'm mean. Well, yeah, that last week.
That's Courtney, not Courtney Deifel.
Courtney me, not Courtney Deifel. So am I getting ahead of myself with the softball team? I did say Mousetown was mean last week in a question referring to Leighton Blocker.
So he's being mean again.
He's being mean again, yeah.
He's criticizing the softball team. Look, he has a point to a certain extent about the Penn State game because, again, they went into the 8th inning, which is an extra inning, and so right off the bat, Arkansas is allowed to place a runner on second, and they successfully bunted her over to third. And then what you're trying to do then is bring that runner home, and there's a lot of ways you can do that, and they had 2 straight strikeouts. That was a terrible thing. So then Penn State does that, bunts the runner over to third, and the first batter up after that gets a base hit, game over.
Yeah.
So that's probably why he's a little bit upset. But if you actually look, Arkansas is batting over 300 as a team, so that's not an indication that they can't hit the ball. Hannah Kamazin and Hannah Gamble. Kamazin is batting 250 and Gamble is hitting 143, so the 2 Hannahs need to step it up.
Well,
that's the only criticism I can see.
I'll say this, in defense, at least of Hannah Gamble. We sat down with her before the season started. I did a whole story on her, which you can go see on our website. It's even on our YouTube page. But she did not have a great year last year.
Right.
She didn't, especially after that sophomore season that she had, which was just incredible. You know, she was named a preseason All-American last year. I mean, it was just a great year for her that sophomore season. Junior season, not so much. And so I think, and part of what she talked about is a mindset thing. She's getting back into it, and she changed her swing, actually. That was what DJ Gasso coming in and helping.
Hitting coach.
She got a new hitting coach, and she's changed her swing back to that sophomore swing. And so she feels like that's giving her a lot more confidence and doing better, but she's still getting back into it. She said that. She is still getting back into it. So I will say that this is the first tournament. They went 4-1 in the Paradise Classic in Florida.
But some people are saying, yeah, but
you should have gone 5-0. Yeah.
3 of those were against ding-dong teams. They played 2 teams from the Power 4.
Well, true.
Michigan State and Penn State.
True.
And they're up north and shouldn't be as far along as a Southern team.
But there's still competition, and that was their first.
Well, the one thing we'll agree on,
Okay.
I'll agree with Mousetown on the pitching. I thought was good.
Okay. All right. You like the pitching, and you're
And
still.
it's too early to evaluate hitting.
That's what I was going to say. I think you go 4-1 in a tournament in Florida against other competition, the first time you've seen any other competition this season, and you go 4-1. I don't think that's necessarily
So
the worst
we
thing
will
in the
end
world.
this by concluding that yes, Mousetown is mean.
Yes, Mousetown is mean. I like it. We can agree on that fact. Eddie Lynn wants to know, does Arkansas have a serious NIL problem? I've read on the internet where Missouri and Ole Miss are passing us because they have way more NIL money. I thought we had money in Arkansas. Are our boosters cheapskates? Ooh.
Okay, I've been kind of looking into that whole thing ever since the end of football season. So I've been talking to a lot of people since then, and boy, there's a lot of different opinions that you run into. Now, the first thing I ran into was there are a lot of people that believe that Arkansas originally was too conservative. They were trying to operate NIL the way it was described by NCAA rules. And so if you'll remember, when they first set it up, they had a guy on campus doing it, and the idea was that once you get here, you can't do an NIL deal till you sign, but once you get on campus, they would give you a list of agents, and you could pick your agent, and then he would make NIL deals for you, and that's the way it should work. Well, what happened was some of these schools, like Tennessee and A&M, were going way faster than that. They decided to basically ignore the NCAA rules, and they were offering NIL deals before they even got here, and they started a collective. Well, Arkansas has just recently started its collective, and they're just getting it going. But the first conversations I had was, well, it's not that bad. They started late. And so now they've shifted and got this EDGE program, and it may take them a little while to catch up, but they'll be okay. That was the first answer. Then I delved into this further, and some people said, yeah, but the EDGE program is messed up. It's not any good. It's a professional company out of California, and they take too much money off the top. And I had one booster tell me, I will never give them an NIL contribution until they get rid of them. I don't want my money going to some company from California. I'd rather it go to somebody here. And so that was another suggestion, that that's not right. And I had somebody tell me, oh, your check went down and checked with Houston and modeled his new NIL approach after theirs, and we don't need an NIL approach like the University of Houston. We're an SEC team. We don't want to do what those yo-yos do. I mean, you get into a lot of this when you start talking to people. So there was that. Then I had somebody else tell me, okay, look, this NIL thing is fluid. It's eventually, everybody knows, with any brains knows, they can't allow this to continue because it's just open buying of players. And so the first approach was, and I'm sure they did this under pressure, but the NCAA finally started cracking down. They announced that they had what they named 3 schools. They named Tennessee, Florida State
and Florida.
Florida and Virginia.
Yeah.
They named those 4 schools. Okay, we're notifying you that you're under. I think they had already determined they broke the rules.
Yeah,
you broke the rules. We're gonna penalize you. And then what happened there was that Tennessee and Virginia use their attorneys general in that state to file a lawsuit against the NCAA to stop them. And that's going to take a while to play out. So what the one booster I was talking to said to me is, I'm not going to throw money in there when this thing could get solved. Because he believes that if the NCAA is allowed to uphold the rules, it will scale this stuff all back, and then you won't just be buying players left and right. It'll work the way it was supposed to work. But he's still willing to sit here and wait for a long time, and the problem could get worse. But you know, I'm not in the position to say, look, you dummy, give them your money. It's not up to me.
No.
I'm just listening to what the guy said. And then there's the other group of, and there were 2 or 3 people I talked to like this. They were mad because they wanted a change made at football. And so because a change wasn't made with the head football coach, we're not giving any money to NIL until just to throw it down a rat hole because football program's not being run right. And again, I don't tell them this, but what I'm thinking is, well, what do you do in the meantime? Let it get worse? In other words, you're not going to help Pittman at all. And he's trying. He's hired Petrino. He's got a new offensive line coach. He's done some stuff to try and help solve the problem. And you're just going to sit here and wait and not give him NIL money and just make him prove it and hoping that he'll get fired.
No.
And then by that time, maybe the program's so far down the tubes that how long is it going to take to bring it back?
Well, you're also not helping the other programs too, because Arkansas Edge is for every single sports program.
That's
so
right.
So do you want to not help the rest of the sports programs because you're mad at the football program?
Yeah. And then finally, there was somebody that I was talking to, and I get these people all confused, and he was saying, well, Ole Miss and Missouri do a lot more grassroots NIL. In other words, just they somehow have a better program of just getting local people that maybe are not season ticket holders or not boosters, but they just get a little bit of money and they'll send it in, $15, $20, $30. You got an extra $50, I'll send it in. And you want that to be used as the part of the collective overall to help. And he said that, you know, Ole Miss is a lot better than that and Missouri's pretty good. So again, you've got somebody saying that. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not over there looking at their finances, and I'm not sure there's any way to do that, and there might be.
I think there's a way because they're public entities. I was about to ask you this. I don't know if there's a way, and maybe we can look into this, to look at how much Arkansas Edge has made already through their fundraising efforts. Because when did they launch? Right at the end of football season, right before basketball season. So it'd be interesting to see at this time now in February, how much money have you actually raised, how much money comes off the top, and then what money have you distributed to the athletes, you know? So I'd like to see that, and maybe we can look into that. I know our own Evan Kamiko is working on a story with Arkansas Edge, so we'll see if we
can find that stuff out.
Hopefully we can get some answers for you on that.
And then finally.
Finally, okay.
I had one booster tell me, we don't have an NIL problem. That's all made up nonsense. We're all right.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, pick which one of those you believe in.
Pick which one you like and go with that one. Razor Alex 88 says, I might just forgo getting tickets to any football games this season. Last season's home games left a bad taste in my mouth. It's hard to keep people engaged when the product on the field is ... horrifying. The drama there, the game day atmosphere was just severely lackluster. Alabama has light shows and Ole Miss has drone shows. Ole Miss! What do we have other than running through the A? I'm drawing up blanks.
Yeah, we like Razor Alex 88, but this one's a little strange. I mean, I would think the average fan right now, if you somehow did a poll, they would say that the biggest issue right now is they want them to win games. I don't think they'd be talking about laser shows right now or light shows or things like that. Let's win some games and then we'll complain about the laser shows or the light shows. I mean, look, this is an individual thing. I go to the games as media, but it hasn't been that long, I guess, in my mind. I used to go to games when I was growing up. I mean, I thought the atmosphere was cool. You just have a mascot, and you have bands, and you're just sitting there.
The halftime show with the band is always
all the cheers
awesome.
The fans did. In Lubbock, they do that 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1 for the Raiders. Stand up and holler, and everybody stand up, sort of like calling the pigs. You know, different things like that. I always thought that stuff was cool.
Yeah.
So I didn't need lights, laser shows, all this
laser
crazy
shows
stuff.
and drone shows.
It's like the other night at the Georgia game. So they have those dogs that run
the
it.
corgi race.
Okay, I'm sure you like the dog races.
Hey, that was pretty exciting. Everybody
I'm not
liked the
into
dog
stuff
races.
like that. You know what I used to like I like the dancing Razorbacks.
Yeah.
You remember them?
Oh yeah, every school has like a dance team, and the Dazzlers are at Florida, and I love when the Dazzlers do a halftime show.
Gene Nail
awesome.
was in charge of them, and they were so good,
Yeah.
and it was entertaining at halftime, and they did all these special programs for Christmas and different times of the year, Thanksgiving or whenever it was, and I don't know. I don't know that you need the dogs racing and people shooting free throws and things like that.
I think it can be fun and it can add to the atmosphere. If you aren't a sports fan, because Eric Musselman kind of talked about this, about hyping up the atmosphere and making it so because professional sports is doing this, where they give you so many other things to do. Well, it brings you in, right? Let's say you're not a sports fan like you and I.
Well, then what are you doing there?
Well, you're there for the atmosphere. You're there for other things. So that's what those corgi races and all that.
You know what I always tell my wife? I tell her, there is nothing they could do to make an opera so interesting that I would go.
Really?
I don't care what they did.
Are you sure
unless
about
they
that?
had a football game in the middle of it.
They might. They could do that.
You're just dressing something up. If people don't want to see it in the first place, why do you think you're going to? Oh yeah, I don't like basketball, but I like watching dogs chase each other.
Hey, it's for a 30-second thing at halftime. If that's what you like, go for 30 seconds and enjoy it. I guess.
I like the Hog Wild Band.
Yeah,
I like the Dancing
Hog Wild Band
Razorbacks.
too.
I like what's the big one? The big hog, the one that's poofed up.
Oh, Boss Hog?
Boss Hog.
Boss
I like
Hog's
watching
great.
him go around. They used to have, it depends on how good the person. Used to have a guy he could turn over and bounce back up.
They can. I saw him do that at the basketball game.
Yeah.
No, he can do that.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's great, but that all goes in the atmosphere. I still think the atmosphere to Razor Alex 88 at the football games where they put the fire out and it's pyrotechnics and I like
So
that.
they do that at
beginning.
Ole Miss. I don't like anything.
like that.
There's nothing about Ole Miss that I like.
Well, I
Ole
didn't
Miss
say
can
I
buzz
like
off.
Ole Miss. I said at Razorback games, they do the fire when they run out, the pyrotechnics. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, okay, whatever. I like it. Hot Dogger says, of all the games played during Coach Pittman's era, I think the best game where both offense and defense played to potential was playing the Longhorns in Fayetteville. Would you agree, or do you have another game you'd choose?
No, that's it. And I think that's the best win of the Pittman era because, first of all, you have to understand what a rival Texas is. And then Arkansas played really well on both sides of the ball in that game. They didn't just beat Texas, they dominated them. And I think the proof is in the results. They didn't just storm the field and go, oh, let's just storm the field. They stormed it because it was Texas and because you totally beat them into the ground and embarrassed them and played well on both sides of the ball. So that's what you want moving forward. That's the value that Texas coming into the league can offer. The problem is they've been so bad for 15 or 20 years, I think they might suddenly be back finally. I kept thinking they can't stay down forever. And Sarkisian's kind of got it going. I'm a little bit worried. We'll see. We'll see.
Mike, I never thought you'd say that on this
Well,
show.
I like to, but I'm not stupid. They look like they're a little better, you know.
I know.
So it'd be just our
Texas is
luck.
back.
They come into the SEC and we can't beat them. So hopefully we can beat them next year.
Absolutely. I think that would be huge. And huge. We're talking about big atmospheres. That's going to be a big atmosphere.
Yep,
I can't wait for that one. Marty Bird's Proxy asks, in your time here covering the Hogs, can you name someone behind the scenes who has had a positive impact on the programs and, more importantly, the student
It's a
athletes?
pretty easy question to answer, and it is the team trainers.
Yeah.
But they are closer to those athletes than just about anybody. Nobody ever hears about them. Dean Weber he's retired now, but he was a long-time trainer he was the head trainer and then the trainer for the football program going all the way back before I got here. So he was here during the Broyles years. And you always knew about Dean because when players would come back for reunions, they'd bring in the class of 69 or the class of 73 or whatever it was. Anytime they brought in a bunch of players for a reunion, the first thing they would do is go find Dean Weber.
Yeah.
Absolutely the first, and then I'd see him over there talking to him. They'd be laughing about stuff. And then the same thing with Dave England. I talked to Nolan just a few days ago, and he was just raving about what Dave England did for his players. Why is it the trainers that are so important? I think, first of all, if you're a player, you want to play, but we talk about serious injuries where a doctor would be involved. But most injuries are just those kind of injuries that trainers deal with. They're bumps and bruises. They have a way of making it where you can still play, where you can still work out without a lot of pain. And so you get to where you trust these guys because they know what they're doing. And because of that, I think when they're in a training room working with you, you just naturally have conversations. Do you have a conversation with your doctor when he's in? I do.
Yeah.
My personal physician, I like the guy. I'm real good friends with him. So you just start talking to somebody like that.
Yeah.
And then they end up almost becoming like a confessor father figure or something.
I was about to say they're like therapists a
They
little
are.
bit too. They're not just
a player will
trainers.
go in and start talking to him about the mean coach said this and the mean coach did that and it's mean. And then they're able then sometimes, as Nolan said, they'll come back and talk to the coaches and say, hey, he really is hurt. You need to back off.
Yeah.
Michael Smith once told this story when I was he's a former Razorback running back. I've told this story before where he got hurt in a game and he couldn't practice, and Bobby Petrino was furious with him, kept yelling at him, telling him to get up back on the practice field. He said, Coach, I can't, it hurts too bad. So he went to the trainer 2 or 3 days trying to get it better, and it didn't work, so they had to take him and get an MRI. And when they did, they found out that he had a torn hamstring. Well, you can't play with a torn hamstring, you can't do anything. And so he saw Petrino in the hallway. He said this, I wasn't there. He said he saw Petrino in the hallway and said, well, what do you think now, Coach? He said, well, I still think you're a weenie. He was still making fun of him.
Oh, my gosh.
But that's just coaching. But the point is, the trainer wouldn't let him, they have that power. They didn't know what was wrong with him, but they knew he was injured to a point he wasn't just making that up.
Yeah.
And I think when you get that kind of a thing going with a trainer, they become huge in your life and your years as a player. And that's why when they come back, those are some of the first people they go see, the trainers.
It's funny you should mention Dean Weber because I remember something when we went to that Hogs Plus premiere of the Houston Nut documentary, and the team was all up there and talking, and they had the best stories about him. And it was really touching because it was like you saw how he touched each athlete's life. And you're so right that these people deserve more credit because of all the things they do. I mean, it's just,
most fans are not aware of that, how big a deal that is to the success of. Nolan said, hey, Dave England has much to do with us winning a national championship of any of the players.
Yeah, I remember him telling that when we sat down. And speaking of Nolan, you guys got to do a cool thing, and S. Giles wants to know about it. He says, I read on X where you and Alyssa got to visit with Nolan just last week. What was the occasion? Any stories from the visit?
Okay, we're going to do a series of stories coming up in April, I think it is, on the 30th anniversary of the '94 National Championship scene. So we went out to talk to him about it. It was interesting, talking to him. One of the things he said over and over again was, and I knew this, I remember this from those days, and you can go look it up. You can go look up the stats from those 6 games. He said that team could play either way. He had built his reputation and his programs on really tough defense, the so-called 40 minutes of hell, and we will score from our defense. We will take the ball away from you, and we'll go down to the other end of the court and dunk it. And it saves us from having to play half-court basketball against you. But he said that team was good enough to play either way. If we ran into somebody that we wanted to do that to, we could do it. And there were games that, ironically, the Duke game, the last one, they ended up having to go to that style because Duke got up on them by 10 or 12 points early in the second half, and Arkansas had no choice but to try and go full court pressure on them. They did, and it got them back into the game. But most of those games, they won playing half-court basketball. And when you look at the statistics, and it was interesting because Nolan said he never really thought too much about rebounding. He thought it was an overrated stat because it doesn't do you any good in a rebound unless you score. Now, he said, points off, second chance and third chance points are important. But he said, the real way you could measure what that team was doing was our shooting percentage versus their shooting percentage. And there was one of those games, I think it might have been the Tulsa game, Arkansas shot 61% and Tulsa shot 30-something%, and Arkansas had like 30-something assists. Wow. It was just an incredible number of assists. And he said, that's the other thing we did that year is we shared the basketball. That's why we were able to play half court the way we were offensively, because everybody shared the basketball. And then one of the things, everybody talks about Scotty Thurman's famous three-pointer that essentially won the game. There was just a little bit of time left. Arkansas was up by 1. He hits the 3, so now you got a 4-point lead with not much time left. But it is, at that point, a 1-point lead. And he said what nobody talks about was that Dwight Stewart had the ball. And he said, I thought he was going to take the shot because he was as good a shooter from the outside as Scotty Thurman was. But they collapsed on him. And he said I thought he was going to take the shot, and I thought no, because he was going to be heavily defended. And then he just turned and got the ball to Scotty Thurman. And he said he had as much to do with that shot as he did. And he said, we had guys like that did things like that. This one guy would get all the attention for doing this, but there was somebody else that helped create that, made that happen. So,
it was unselfish basketball.
Yeah,
it really was.
So it was just interesting, to hear him talk about all that. And then we got into a little bit of this team, and he's kind of mystified like the rest of us. He did say that he thinks there's more talent on this team than most fans realize. He thinks they're actually pretty good players on this team. Realizes that they don't always play together. And he suspects, but he doesn't know this, that some of it is NIL related. He said, I would hate to try to coach right now because what control do you have over players when they're making that kind of money? And they can just leave you. It's the combination of NIL transfer portal. They don't need to stay. That's their attitude of a lot of these players. I don't need to stay here. If you don't do what I want, I'll just be gone somewhere else next year and put myself up for sale and go somewhere else. Yeah. So he'd be the first to say that he would not want to coach today under those rules. He just says he doesn't know how they do it.
I think there's a lot of coaches in his position that would say the same thing. There's coaches now who are coaching currently that say this is such a hard world we have to navigate now. It's just so different than 5-10 years ago. And so, I agree with Nolan there. I'm excited to see that full interview though. So we're going to have that in April for you, plus a bunch of other stories of that 94 team. It's going to be really cool. So that's a little teaser for you guys coming up in April on Pig Trail Nation. And we're going to end off with a question that I didn't know you put in the show, Mike. So TL Slayton says, I can't even get through this question. What does Taylor Swift see in Travis Kelce? She's the most famous singer in the world, and that dude can't carry a tune in a bucket. He tried to sing after the game and about broke the speaker on my TV. She needs to dump him and hook up with a QB. I'm sorry, I couldn't get through that question. That's funny. Mike, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he looked drunk to me. Now we're talking about him up on the podium with the Super Bowl trophy, because I guess they let each one of those guys get up there, have their moment. He must have been drinking champagne or something, because he looked bloated to me. And he was trying to sing, and it sounded like a bull moose had been shot in the butt with rock salt. It was horrible. And you've told me that his brother can actually sing.
Yeah, so. Jason Kelce can't. I listened to their Christmas album. The Philadelphia Eagles put out a Christmas album. This is their second one, I believe. But it was pretty good. Jason can carry a tune. He's all right.
Yeah, well, his brother can't.
No, I know. I know.
I'm reminded of that Ricky, what's his name? You know his name, the British comedian.
Ricky Gervais?
Yeah, that was at the Academy Awards a few years ago, and he's British, and he goes, and when you win your little award, come up here and say thank you, and then go away. That's what he should have done. Just go up there, say thank you for this Super Bowl, and I'm leaving now. Instead of the drunken, I'm going to sing a song for all of you and sound like a Neanderthal.
I don't think he was drunk. I think that's just his persona, that he likes to be a bit crazy. And I think he's talking about when he sings the right to party, when he sang that little tune. And that was kind of a joke from the week before and the week before that, and it's a thing that he does. If it makes you feel any better, they cut away to Taylor Swift, and she looked mortified. So
yeah,
maybe she was a little bit embarrassed.
That's probably what he means. Think of all these NFL guys. There's bound to be a guy out there that can sing, and maybe like a quarterback that can actually sing, and not just some big.
There is quarterbacks that can sing. Tua Tagovailoa can actually sing.
All right, see?
So, but he has a wife, so
all right,
so we can't put him and Taylor Swift together. But I don't think that she cares that he can sing or can't sing. I think they're very happy together. You know, and there's a lot of people
Whatever.
that can't sing in this world, so. They may have a child and they may be a singer /
They will have a child that
A
will be an
football player.
MMA boxer or some woman that's like 6'4" and weighs like 220 pounds and just beats the snot out of all the other.
Okay, all right. That's pretty cool too. I'd say that I'd take that as my kid as well. I mean, I don't know about Travis and Taylor, but hey, more power to them, right? That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.